Have you ever ghosted somebody? And what was the impetus of the ghost? Were you on a dating app? Were you kind of like, I'm not feeling it right now? And in the day and age of feeling into your emotions, and while I'm such a proponent of all of that, there is something to be said around ignoring what is in our way. And that's kind of the perspective I want to take for this conversation. And here's why. Because a lot of times, what happens when we cannot communicate effectively? What happens when let's just say, if I am the ghoster, I might feel like, I don't really want to have that conversation. So you avoid conflict. Or I'm not a confrontation person. So you avoid confrontation. And in our coaching, teaching communities, the biggest, literally, answer that I get is, I just don't want to face it. I don't want to face that person. I don't want to face the other human being. Think about that for a second. This season of life that we're in, with the greatest technology that we have ever, is limiting us from actually having conversations with other people. And in those conversations, there is an opportunity for growth. See, back then, 10, 15 years ago, you had to suck it up if you were going to be called in the back of the room with a teacher. You knew you did something wrong, and you knew they were going to call you out forward. In that conversation, it was probably going to suck a little bit, right? Sucky human moment. But at the end of it, you're like, oh, okay, that teacher doesn't hate me. She's just calling me out on not doing my homework, or copying the kid next to me, or saying that, hey, I wanted something better out of you, and why didn't you perform today? Or whatever the case is. Back then, you didn't have this avoidant philosophy that we have now, where most classes are online, and shout out to the teachers holding Zoom sessions still, but it's so much easier to get away with not facing somebody face to face. Think about it for a second. That is bananas if we think about it. That for my daughter and my son, they're going to be growing up in a world where a lot of times they're not going to need to have conversations face to face. It is going to be on an app. It is going to be on a chat box or texting people. And what I want to bring you to is we're actually, and here's my problem with this, is because I'm in the mode of teaching and really sharing this within our communities as a teacher, as an educator, I want to make sure that the coaches that I am teaching, the training that I'm doing, is making sure that you are competent and confident in sharing your boundaries. And for somebody who is avoiding confrontation, for somebody who says yes, okay, this is another example. They say yes to a certain task, they say yes to a certain thing, and then guess what? They don't ever show up. And this is what happens. And sometimes, for those of you who are entrepreneurs, I'm sure this has happened to you, where you hire somebody to do something, maybe it's a VA, or somebody to do, I don't know, maybe social media graphics or something like that. I'm just going to give a random example that I've experienced. And you give them the tasks and you give them something, and it's a job opportunity exchange. And guess what? They don't show up, or they completely disappear. That is ghosting. And shout out to some of you who probably had to do that. I want to hear why you did that. Because we do a lot of teaching in our coaching communities, especially for DCI, what comes up a lot is, I'm not ready yet. I don't know if it's the right time. And there's a little bit of that imposter that comes up. And there's a little bit of that, I'm a people pleaser. I'm used to saying yes. I'm used to putting everybody's needs before mine, until, you blow the F up. You blow up and you burn out. And guess what? When you're in burnout mode, then you are learning to put yourself first. You are saying fuck it to everybody else around you, because for the first time, You haven't known how to create your own boundaries. So until something big happens, until something monumental happens, that's when you blow out and bust and burst. And then you're like, fuck it, I'm not going to respond to anything. And that is the impetus of the ghost. That is the impetus of ghosting. Because at that point, you're like, yeah, nobody else matters except for me, which I want to applaud you for. But I think there's a better way and there's a healthier way that we can convey our boundaries. Because the missing link here is being okay in setting boundaries. And here's how this can come up. Okay, let's say you're dating, you're on the dating app and you're going along, finding your next boo, finding your next person. Well, it's so easy to ghost somebody on a chat or whatnot. And the argument could be made and say, you know what? That person's not really my vibe. So why should I even respond to them? Absolutely. Take this as an example of stating your boundaries and literally closing up the loop, right? We exchange energy all the time in the things that we do, in the people that we interact with on a day-to-day basis. If we are not closing the loop, okay, energetically, metaphorically, then the same kinds of people will continuously come into our life over and over again. I want you to sit with that, and I want you to listen to that and hear that. The same types of experiences, the same types of people, the same types of karma will keep coming back into your life over and over again, because the universe is kind of like, I need you to understand this lesson. I need you to learn this lesson. Well, you're going to do it again. Because, hey, if I'm going to use a dating example, all right, there's another person who kind of isn't my vibe. And after a few text exchanges, you're kind of like, he or her is, or whatever is blah. And I'm not really into that. So you're going to disengage. You're going to retract. You're going to ignore and move on. But again, the same cycle is going to appear in probably a different way. Maybe not in the dating context. Maybe it'll be in a professional context, a work context, maybe even a friend context. So think about it for a second. What are some of those lessons that perhaps you didn't mean to do that, but it keeps coming back over and over again in different dynamics? Versus practicing your boundaries. Versus, and this is where I want you to think of stretching yourself, expanding yourself, being brave to say no to the things that you're not really energetically aligned with. You're not really energetically in tune with. I want to have you practice and really test yourself. Get above your edge and go to the edge of what you feel comfortable with, to say, you know what? No, that's not my person. And actually respond back to that text thread. Go back to your Bumble app, go back to Tinder or wherever, or Hinge, and go back and look at all of those open loops. This is just going to be an example, right? Practice session. Because literally go back and see all of those messages that you ignored or whatever it was that you started, maybe 2 or 3, and then ghost. This is a beautiful example of testing your boundaries and saying, you know what? Hey, I'm not really feeling this conversation. Thank you so much and good luck to you. And you're probably thinking, Neither, that is so dumb. Why would I ever do that? But what I'm saying is trust the process. If we want to become better at stating our boundaries, I'm giving you a tiny little breadcrumb to just collect and catch. I'm giving you a tiny little breadcrumb to practice saying no to somebody else and saying yes to you. Okay? Because then next week, when your boss gives you something, or your team member, or your business partner, or your mother, or your father, or whoever you look up to, that you can actually say, you know what? I love you so much, and this is not going to work for me. Yes, that is huge. Because the way that we show up, even when we're dating, and I'm using a silly example as a dating app, but for some of you, you're probably like, actually, yeah, this is probably what I need. This is the kick in the butt that I actually need, because I do ignore people. I do leave a lot of open tabs, and that's just throwing your energy everywhere. And then you wonder why you're not really calling in a partner into your life. How often are you just spilling your energy in all of these places and not closing up that energetic loop? See you next time at the Brave Table.